Laughter rippled through the dojo when Loretta Johnson first appeared in her bright pink GI, a 66-year-old black grandmother among teenagers with lightning reflexes and limitless energy. Connor, the star student, didn't bother lowering his voice. Someone call the retirement home. They're missing a resident. Coach Liam's patronizing smile as he directed her to practice with toddlers only fueled the mockery. Perfect, Loretta thought, letting them underestimate her. They saw only an old woman in a ridiculous uniform, not the fighter who'd nearly earned her black belt 4 decades ago under her husband's tutelage. They couldn't see the muscle memory awakening with each movement, the discipline forged through years of training. As she bowed respectfully, her eyes locked with Connor's smug gaze. Let them laugh now. Soon enough, they'd learn why her late husband had called her the quietest storm. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The afternoon sunlight slanted through the blinds of Loretta Johnson's kitchen, casting warm patterns on the well-worn linoleum floor. At 66, Loretta moved with practiced efficiency, her hands kneading dough for Sunday's church gathering. The quiet of her modest home in Pine Creek, a mid-sized southern town where everyone knew everyone else's business, wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. "Grandma, I'm hungry," called a voice from the living room. "Patience, Jaden," Loretta replied, wiping flour from her dark hands onto her apron. "Good things come to those who wait." 11-year-old Jaden Johnson slouched into the kitchen, his school backpack dragging behind him. Despite his young age, worry lines creased his forehead. He dropped into a chair at the kitchen table with a dramatic sigh that only preteens could perfect. "Rough day?" Loretta asked, already knowing the answer. Jaden shrugged, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Same as always." Loretta stopped kneading and studied her grandson. Since her daughter Tracy had taken that job in Atlanta with those crazy hours, Jaden had been staying with her after school most days. Lately, his shoulders seemed to carry more weight than any 11-year-olds should. "Want to talk about it?" she asked gently. "Not really." Jaden's fingers traced invisible patterns on the tabletop. Loretta nodded, respecting his space. She understood that some wounds needed time before they could be spoken aloud. Instead, she sliced him a piece of yesterday's pound cake and placed it before him with a glass of milk. Later that evening, as Loretta prepared dinner, her mind drifted to another kitchen, another time. Robert, her late husband, stood beside her, his strong hands guiding hers through a sequence of movements. "Like this, Loretta," he'd said, his voice deep and patient. "The power isn't in your arm, it's in your center. Feel it here." He'd placed his hand on her abdomen, steadying her stance. They'd met at his dojo when Loretta was just 19, a rare black woman in a karate class in the early 70s. Robert had been the assistant instructor then, later opening his own school. Under his guidance, she'd advanced quickly, her natural grace complemented by unexpected strength, but that was 40 years ago. Robert had been gone for almost as long, a sudden heart attack taking him when Jaden's mother was just a baby. Loretta had packed away her GI alongside her grief. Tucking both into boxes she didn't care to reopen. The memory faded as Jaden's voice pulled her back to the present. "Grandma, can I stay home tomorrow?" Loretta turned from the stove. "And why would you want to do that?" "I just don't feel good." The lie sat awkwardly between them. Loretta crossed her arms. "I wasn't born yesterday, child." "What's really going on?" Jaden's facade crumbled. "The karate classes at the community center. I don't want to go anymore." "But you were so excited about those." "What happened?" "Connor happened," Jaden muttered. "He said I move like a baby giraffe." Everyone laughed. His voice cracked. Even Coach Liam smiled. Loretta felt heat rise in her chest. "And who is this Connor?" "He's the best student. 14 and already has a green belt. Coach Liam always uses him for demonstrations." Loretta sat down across from her grandson. "Look at me, Jaden." When he reluctantly met her eyes, she continued, "People are always going to laugh. That doesn't mean you stop. It means you get better. I'm not good at it like Connor." "Not yet," Loretta corrected. "Nobody starts as a master." Jaden shook his head. "I'm done with it. I'll find something else." Loretta started to argue but stopped herself. Force wouldn't work with Jaden, it never did. Instead, she nodded slowly. "All right, you take a break. But I'm going to the grocery store tomorrow, and I expect you to come with me." The next day, As they walked through the sliding doors of Piggly Wiggly, Loretta kept her real mission to herself. While Jaden sulked beside the shopping cart, she scanned the community bulletin board near the entrance. There it was, exactly what she'd hoped to find. Community Karate Challenge announced a bright yellow flyer. Open training workshop leading to local competition. All ages welcome. Register now. Loretta pulled the flyer down and tucked it into her purse. A plan was forming in her mind, one that might just save her grandson's dignity while teaching him something about perseverance. After dropping Jaden at home with groceries to unpack, Loretta made an excuse about forgetting bread and drove straight to the community center. Inside, the place hummed with activity. Children racing down hallways, seniors gathering for bingo, teenagers lounging by vending machines at the front desk. A young woman with bright purple hair looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" "Ma'am, I'd like to register for the karate program," Loretta said firmly. The woman blinked. "For your grandchild?" "For myself," Loretta corrected. "And my grandson. We'll be taking classes together." The woman's surprise was poorly concealed. "Oh, well, that's wonderful. The adult classes are Tuesday and Thursday evenings. I'll take the youth class," Loretta interrupted. "Whatever time my grandson is in. But that's mostly kids. And teens. Perfect." Loretta smiled sweetly. "I'm sure they can teach this old dog some new tricks." By the time she left with 2 registration forms completed, Loretta felt a spark of excitement she hadn't experienced in decades. That evening, she broke the news to Jaden over dinner. "You what?" His fork clattered against his plate. "You heard me. I signed us both up. We start Monday." "Grandma, you can't be serious." "Dead serious." Loretta took a sip of water. "And don't tell me I'm too old. Your grandfather taught me well, and some things you don't forget. You used to do karate." Jaden's eyes widened. "With Grandpa?" Loretta nodded. "Before you were born. Before your mother was born, even." But Jaden struggled to process this new information. "Grandma, Connor will laugh even harder if you show up. And all the other kids too." "Let them laugh," Loretta said with a shrug. Laughter never broke any bones. The weekend passed with Jaden alternating between pleading and sulking. Loretta remained unmoved. On Sunday evening, she announced she needed to go shopping for proper attire. "You're not really going through with this," Jaden groaned. But Monday morning found them at Sport Mart, where Loretta firmly told the salesperson she needed a GI in her size. "We have white, black, and blue," the young man offered. "Let me see what you have." After trying several options, the only one that fit Loretta's frame was, unfortunately, not the traditional white she remembered from her youth. It was pink. Bright, unmistakable pink. "This is the only one?" she asked. "In your size?" "Yes, ma'am. It's from our breast cancer awareness collection." Loretta examined herself in the mirror. The color was startling against her dark skin, but the cut was good and the material was quality. She turned to Jaden, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Grandma, please." "You can't." Loretta straightened her shoulders. "I certainly can. And I will." To the salesperson, she said, "We'll take it. And a white one for my grandson." As they left the store, Jaden muttered, "I'm going to die of embarrassment." Loretta chuckled. "Child, we're Johnson women. We don't die of embarrassment. We cause it." Then, with a softer tone, she added, "I'm a warrior in Rose now. You'll see." Monday afternoon arrived too quickly for Jaden and not quickly enough for Loretta. As they entered the community center dojo, all eyes turned to them, or more specifically, to Loretta in her vibrant pink GI, moving with dignity across the mat. The room fell into a hush before whispers erupted. A cluster of teenagers in the corner didn't bother to lower their voices. "Is she for real? Whose grandma is that? Oh my God, it's pink." Loretta ignored them all, her focus on the young man who approached them. He was in his early 30s, with an easy smile and a black belt tied around his waist. "Welcome," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Coach Liam. You must be Mrs. Johnson and Jaden." "Please, call me Loretta," she replied, giving his hand a firm shake. Liam's eyes flicked to her attire, but his professional demeanor held. "First time taking karate." Before Loretta could correct him, a loud voice cut through the dojo. "Hey, coach, we getting started or what?" Loretta turned to see a teenage boy with sandy hair and a confident smirk. He wore a green belt tied with obvious pride around his waist. The same boy locked eyes with Jaden, who immediately looked at the floor. That's Connor, Liam explained unnecessarily. One of our more enthusiastic students. I can see that, Loretta said dryly. Liam clapped his hands. Everyone circle up. We have new members today. The class reluctantly formed a circle on the mat. When Liam introduced Loretta, snickers rippled through the group. One girl even pulled out her phone and snapped a picture. For social media, she whispered to her friend. Caption, Pink Power Granny. Connor's voice rose above the others. Coach, is she really going to train with us? Shouldn't there be, like, a senior division or something? More laughter followed. Jaden shrank beside Loretta, who stood perfectly still, her expression serene despite the heat in her veins. Liam cleared his throat. Loretta, maybe it would be best if you joined our beginner group first, just to learn the basics. He gestured to a small corner where toddlers and young children were being led through simple movements by an assistant instructor. The insult was clear, but Loretta simply bowed. Whatever you think is best, coach. As she walked toward the children's section, Connor called out, Careful, Granny might break a hip. The dojo erupted in laughter. Even Liam's reprimand seemed half-hearted. Loretta joined the circle of children, some as young as 4, who stared at her with innocent curiosity. The young woman leading them looked uncertain. We're just working on basic stretches and learning how to fall safely, she explained. Perfect, Loretta said. I'll follow your lead. To everyone's surprise, Loretta performed each exercise with unexpected grace. When it came time to practice falls, she demonstrated a perfect backward roll that left the assistant instructor blinking in astonishment. You've done this before? The young woman asked. Loretta smiled. Once or twice. From the sidelines, a few parents watching the children's class nudged each other, pointing at Loretta with expressions of growing respect. One mother even clapped when Loretta helped a struggling child master a stance. Across the dojo, Jaden was paired with a boy his age, both clearly trying to avoid Connor's attention. Occasionally, Jaden glanced at his grandmother, confusion mixing with reluctant admiration in his eyes. As the class ended, Loretta and Jaden gathered their things. Connor passed by, deliberately bumping Jaden's shoulder. See you Wednesday, baby giraffe, he sneered. Then, looking at Loretta, he added louder, Watch out, everyone. Granny's gonna break a hip next time. More laughter followed them to the door. Jaden's shoulders slumped in defeat, but Loretta's back remained straight, her chin high. As Connor turned away, she called after him. We'll see, young man. We'll certainly see. In the car, Jaden was silent until they reached the first stoplight. Why did you do that, Grandma? Why would you embarrass yourself like that? Loretta turned to look at her grandson. Who says I'm embarrassed? Everyone was laughing at you. Let them laugh, Loretta said simply. Their laughter can't touch what's inside me. But, no buts, she interrupted. Sometimes, Jaden, you have to let people underestimate you. It gives you the advantage of surprise. Jaden shook his head, clearly not understanding. But as they pulled into the driveway, he asked quietly, Are we really going back on Wednesday? Loretta smiled. You bet we are, baby. With bells on. The following morning, while dew still clung to the grass and the neighborhood slept, Loretta Johnson stood barefoot in her backyard. She breathed deeply, letting the cool dawn air fill her lungs as she closed her eyes. For a moment, she simply existed in the quiet, a woman of 66 preparing to remember what her body had once known so well. She began slowly, with the most basic kata her husband had taught her. Her movements were tentative at first, muscles protesting positions they hadn't held in decades. But with each passing minute, something awakened within her. Muscle memory, yes, but also something deeper. Purpose that a cardinal watched from the old oak tree. As Loretta's movements became more fluid, more confident. She transitioned from one form to another, her pink GI, which she decided to wear for practice as well, catching the first rays of sunlight. When she finished, sweat beaded on her forehead despite the morning chill, and her breathing came harder than it once had. But she was smiling. Inside the house, unbeknownst to Loretta, Jaden watched from his bedroom window. His expression shifted between confusion and fascination as he observed his grandmother moving with unexpected precision. Later that morning, after Jaden had left for school, Loretta drove to Oakwood Cemetery. She navigated the familiar paths until she reached Robert's grave. marked by a simple headstone bearing his name and the dates that bookend his too short life. She knelt despite the protest in her knees and placed fresh flowers beside the stone. Then, from her purse, she withdrew a white belt, worn and yellowed with age. "I think it's time I finish what we started," she said to the quiet grave. "Remember how you always said I was 3 tests away from my black belt? I walked away from it all when you died. Thought there wasn't any point without you." She paused, running her fingers over the weathered belt. "But there was a point. There is a point. I just forgot it for a while." She placed the belt at the base of the headstone. "I'm going to earn a new one, Bobby, in your honor, and to show our grandson what it means to stand tall." For the rest of the week, Loretta rose before dawn to practice. Each morning, her body remembered more, moved more freely. The kata Robert had drilled into her emerged from the fog of memory. Heian Naiden, Basai Dai, Kankadai. Names and movements that had once been as familiar as her own reflection. That on Wednesday afternoon, she and Jaden returned to the dojo. This time, Jaden walked a little straighter, though he still positioned himself as far from Connor as possible. Coach Liam approached Loretta before class began. "Mrs. Johnson, Loretta, can I speak with you for a moment?" They stepped to the side of the mat. Liam looked uncomfortable. "I wanted to check in with you. Monday's class was, well, I know some of the students weren't very welcoming." "They were being teenagers," Loretta said with a shrug. "I've raised one. I know how they operate." "Still," Liam continued, "I want to make sure you understand that karate requires significant physical commitment. With your experience level, you don't have to prove anything." Loretta met his gaze steadily. "That's where you're wrong, Coach Liam. I do have something to prove, just not what you think." Before Liam could respond, Connor's voice rang out across the dojo. "Hey, everyone, check this out." He had bent over, pretending to walk with a cane, his movements exaggerated and painfully slow. "I'm Granny in the pink pajamas," he called in. A wavering voice. "Watch me do karate." Several students laughed. One girl looked uncomfortable, but joined in when Connor glanced her way. Liam sighed but didn't intervene immediately, which Loretta noted with a slight narrowing of her eyes. "I should handle that," Liam said finally. "No need," Loretta replied calmly. "Let him have his fun. Class is about to start anyway." Liam called everyone to attention, and the session began with warm-up exercises. When it came time to practice, break falls, controlled ways of falling safely, Liam demonstrated once before asking for a volunteer. To everyone's surprise, Loretta raised her hand. "Mrs. Johnson," Liam hesitated. "These falls can be a bit jarring. Perhaps, I'd like to try." She insisted quietly that a hush fell over the dojo as Loretta stepped forward. Even Connor stopped his whispering to watch. "All right," Liam said cautiously. "We're practicing the rear break fall. The key is to tuck your chin to protect your head and slap the mat with your arms to distribute the impact." Loretta nodded, positioned herself, and without hesitation, executed a perfect rear break fall. Her form was textbook, chin tucked back, rounded, arms slapping the mat at precisely the right angle. She rolled back up to her feet in one smooth motion. The silence in the room was complete. Liam blinked several times. "That was very good," he managed. "Have you done this before?" Loretta simply smiled. "Once or twice." From the corner of her eye, she saw Jaden staring at her, mouth slightly open. Connor's frown was equally satisfying that as the class progressed, Loretta noticed a subtle shift. When Liam paired students for practice, a young girl named Mia was assigned to work with Loretta instead of being sent to the children's section. "I'm scared of falling," Mia confessed when they were practicing together. "The fear is natural," Loretta told her. "But here's a secret. It's not about not being afraid. It's about breathing through the fear." She demonstrated how to breathe properly, then guided Mia through several slow falls, supporting her each time. By the end of the exercise, Mia was falling on her own, her face bright with accomplishment. "You're a good teacher," Mia said. "I had a good teacher myself, once upon a time," Loretta replied. Other parents began to take notice. During water breaks, Loretta overheard snippets of conversation. "Did you see how she helped Mia? My Tyler said she showed him how to keep his balance better than Coach did. Wonder where she trained before." Coach Liam observed as well. After class, as students filed out, he approached Loretta again. "The way you helped Mia was impressive," he said. "She's been struggling with those falls for weeks. Sometimes all It takes his patience, Loretta replied, and remembering what it feels like to be the one who's afraid. Liam studied her with new interest. Would you be willing to lead the stretching routine next class? I think you might have a knack for this. Loretta inclined her head. I'd be happy to. As they left the dojo, Jaden was uncharacteristically quiet. In the car, he finally spoke up. Grandma, how come you never told me you were good at karate? Loretta kept her eyes on the road. Because I wasn't sure I still was. But you are. It wasn't a question. I remember more than I thought I would, she admitted. Your grandfather was an excellent teacher. Is that why you're doing this? Because of Grandpa. Loretta pulled into a gas station and turned to face her. Grandson, partly, but mostly I'm doing it for you. For me, Jaden looked confused. And for me, she added. It's not about winning, Jaden. It's not even about being better than Connor or anyone else. It's about standing tall and finishing what you start. But I feel like a failure every time I go there, Jaden confessed, his voice small. You're not a failure, Loretta said firmly. You're learning. There's a big difference. The following Sunday, after church, Loretta invited Jaden to practice with her in the backyard. At first, he was reluctant, but curiosity won out. Loretta showed him the proper way to stand, how to generate power from his center rather than his limbs. Like this? He asked, mimicking her stance. Almost. Here. She adjusted his posture slightly. Feel that? The stability. Jaden nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. They practiced for an hour, Loretta patiently correcting, encouraging, demonstrating. By the end, Jaden was sweating but grinning. Can we do this again tomorrow? He asked. Every day if you want, Loretta promised that Monday's class showed the first real signs of change. When Loretta led the stretching routine, she incorporated techniques from the old school, Robert's school, with a touch of humor that had even the most skeptical teens smiling despite themselves. Reach for the sky like you're trying to grab the last cookie from the top shelf, she instructed, demonstrating an overhead stretch that had several students giggling. Connor remained aloof, but Loretta caught him watching her more than once. His expression unreadable. Near the end of class, Coach Liam made an announcement that sent a ripple of excitement through the dojo. In 1 month, we'll be hosting an in-house sparring challenge for charity, he explained. All proceeds will go to the Children's Hospital. Students from other dojos will be invited, and you'll be matched according to age and skill level. Sign-up sheets were posted on the wall. Students clustered around, eager to add their names. Loretta approached quietly and wrote her name in clear script. Connor noticed and burst out laughing. What are you going to do, knit us to death? Several students laughed, but Loretta saw uncertainty in some of their eyes now. She simply smiled at Connor. I guess we'll find out, won't we? As they left the dojo, Jaden looked at her with a mixture of awe and worry. Grandma, are you really going to spar? Like fight. It's controlled sparring, Loretta corrected. Not street fighting. But still, you could get hurt. Loretta squeezed his shoulder. I could also surprise a few people, including me, Jaden admitted. Especially you, Loretta chuckled. That's the best part. The first rays of dawn painted Loretta's backyard in shades of gold and amber. Birds chirped their morning songs as she moved through her kata with growing confidence. 2 weeks had passed since she'd first stepped onto the dojo mat in her pink GI, and her body was remembering more each day. She transitioned from a front stance to a side kick, her movements fluid despite the occasional creak of protest from her joints. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she completed the sequence, bowing to an invisible opponent. Your form's getting better. Loretta turned to find Jaden standing on the back porch, still in his pajamas, watching her with curious eyes. How long have you been there? She asked, grabbing a towel to wipe her face. Long enough, he answered with a small smile. Can you show me that kick again? Loretta grinned. Come on out here then. Together, grandmother and grandson practiced in the quiet morning light. Loretta corrected Jaden's stance, showed him how to generate power from his hips rather than his leg. Like this? He asked, executing a kick that was significantly improved from his previous attempts. That's it. Loretta clapped. You're a natural, just like your grandfather always said you would be. Jaden beamed at the praise. Can we do this again tomorrow? Every morning if you want, Loretta promised. Now go get ready for school. Education before combat, always. As Jaden dashed inside, Loretta couldn't help but smile. The spark had been lit. For both of them, the morning training sessions became their ritual. Loretta would rise before the sun, begin her practice, and Jaden would join her halfway through. Sometimes they worked in companionable silence. Other times they talked about school, about the other students at the dojo, about memories of Grandpa Robert that Jaden had never heard before. Did Grandpa really break 3 boards at once? Jaden asked one morning as they cooled down. 4. Loretta corrected with a nostalgic smile. And let me tell you, the man wouldn't stop bragging about it for weeks. Their progress was evident. At the dojo as well, Jaden no longer shrank away when Connor entered the room. He still kept his distance, but there was a new steadiness in his stance, a quiet confidence beginning to emerge. Loretta, meanwhile, had been moved from the children's beginner group to the main class. Though Coach Liam still paired her mostly with younger students, the whispers and outright mockery had begun to fade, replaced with curious glances and reluctant respect, all except from Connor, who seemed increasingly agitated by Loretta's presence. And from one particular parent who watched from the sidelines with narrowed eyes. One evening after class, as parents collected their children, Coach Liam found himself cornered by a group of adults led by a sharp-featured woman with an expensive haircut and meticulously maintained nails. "We need to discuss the direction of this dojo," the woman said, her voice carrying just enough to draw attention. Liam sighed. "What's on your mind, Brenda?" Brenda Williams straightened her designer blouse and glanced pointedly toward Loretta, who was helping a young student perfect a block. "Is this dojo for real, or is it becoming some kind of retirement center?" Her words dripped with disdain. "My Connor has been training for years. He's serious about competing at the state level. How is he supposed to prepare properly when you're letting seniors participate like it's a community bingo night?" Several parents nodded in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable but remained silent. "Mrs. Johnson pays the same fees as everyone else," Liam replied evenly. "And from what I've seen, she takes the training just as seriously." "It sets the wrong tone," another parent chimed in. "The kids don't know whether to laugh or feel sorry for her." "Maybe they could try respect," suggested a quieter voice from the back of the group. A father whose daughter had been working with Loretta earlier, Brenda dismissed him with a wave. "This isn't about respect. It's about standards, about creating an environment where serious students can excel without distractions." The conversation continued, voices rising and falling, but Loretta pretended not to hear as she gathered her things. Jaden, however, caught snippets and his face flushed with anger. "They can't talk about you like that," he whispered fiercely. "Let them talk," Loretta replied calmly. "Words only have the power we give them." Later that evening, after Jaden had gone to bed, Loretta's phone rang. It was Coach Liam. "Mrs. Johnson, I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. And please, it's Loretta." A brief pause. "Loretta, I wanted to speak with you about today, about what some of the parents were saying." "You don't need to explain, Coach. I heard enough." "Then you understand why I need to ask," he hesitated. "Some parents have expressed concerns about your participation in the charity sparring event." Loretta's grip tightened on the phone. "Are you asking me to withdraw?" "I'm giving you the option to step away quietly," Liam said carefully, without any embarrassment or confrontation. "I see." Loretta took a deep breath. "And what do you think I should do, Coach Liam?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Officially, I need to present the parents' concerns. And unofficially," Liam's voice lowered slightly. "Unofficially, I'm curious to see what you're really capable of." Loretta smiled to herself. "Then let them watch," she said firmly. "They'll see something they never expected." The following class, tension hung in the air like a storm cloud. Brenda Williams sat prominently in the parents' section, her posture rigid as she watched Loretta enter in her pink GI. Connor seemed to feed off his mother's energy, performing his kata with exaggerated power and shooting smug glances toward Jaden. "Today we're going to do some light sparring practice," Liam announced. "In preparation for the charity event, I want everyone to get comfortable with controlled contact. Remember the rules: light touches only, stop when I call it, bow before and after." He began pairing students together based on size and experience. When only a few remained, including Loretta, he hesitated. "Loretta, would you work with Amber?" he finally said, gesturing to a teenage girl with a yellow belt. Amber looked at Loretta uncertainly. "Coach, is this? I mean, Just light sparring, Liam assured her. Focus on technique, not power. The pair spread out across the mat. From the corner of her eye, Loretta saw Brenda pull out her phone, clearly expecting to capture something worth sharing. Loretta and Amber bowed to each other. The girl was clearly uncomfortable, her movements tentative as she circled Loretta. It's okay, Loretta said quietly. Don't hold back on my account. Amber nodded and threw a half-hearted punch that Loretta easily sidestepped. Another punch, slightly more committed, met only air as Loretta pivoted gracefully away. Frustration flickered across Amber's face. She launched a more determined combination, jab, cross, front kick, putting real effort behind her movements. Now, what happened next drew gasps from around the dojo. Instead of backing away, Loretta moved into the combination. With subtle shifts of her body, she redirected each strike past her, catching Amber's wrist on the final punch and using the girl's momentum to turn her in a complete circle before releasing her gently. The entire sequence took less than 3 seconds. Amber stared at Loretta with wide eyes. How did you? Old school technique, Loretta said with a wink. Your form is good, but you telegraph your kicks. From across the room, Connor had stopped his own sparring to watch. His partner took advantage of his distraction to land a clean hit to his shoulder, drawing laughter from nearby students. Brenda was no longer recording casually. She held her phone with focused intent, her expression a mixture of disbelief and something harder to define. By the time class ended, whispers circulated through the dojo. Students clustered in small groups, shooting glances at Loretta as she gathered her things. Did you see how she moved? No way, she just learned that. My dad says she must have trained somewhere before. The video Brenda had taken spread quickly through the local community. What had been intended as ammunition for her campaign against Loretta's participation instead became evidence of something unexpected. The pink GI granny had serious skills. The next morning, the clip had made its way to a regional martial arts forum where it generated dozens of comments. This is the kind of respect traditional martial arts needs. She clearly has foundational training. Look at that footwork. Is this a publicity stunt for the dojo? Either way, mad respect to Grandma. Loretta herself never saw any of it. She had no interest in social media and focused solely on her training with Jaden, who proudly showed her how to execute a new block he'd been practicing. 2 days later, Jaden came home from school with a split lip and fire in his eyes. What happened? Loretta demanded, examining the injury. Connor, Jaden replied, wincing as Loretta applied a cold compress. He was saying stuff about you. Called you a charity case that coach only keeps around for diversity points. Loretta's expression darkened. And you fought him? No, Jaden said. I just told him he better hope you don't get in the ring with him. That's when he shoved me into the lockers. Pride mingled with concern in Loretta's chest. Fighting isn't the answer, Jaden. I know, he sighed. But standing up is, right? That's what you've been teaching me. Loretta couldn't argue with that. She squeezed his shoulder gently. Right you are? Now hold this compress while I make some tea. That evening, while Jaden worked on homework, Loretta's phone rang again. It was Coach Liam. I heard about what happened at school today, he said without preamble. I want you to know I've spoken with Connor and his mother. Thank you, Loretta replied. But that's not going to solve the real problem, is it? No, Liam admitted. It's not. He paused. I visited my old sensei today. Showed him the video of you sparring with Amber. Oh, Loretta's interest peaked. He was impressed. Said, and I quote, that woman's spirit is stronger than half your dojo. Liam chuckled. He's not wrong. Your sensei sounds wise. He is. He also suggested I stop treating you like a novelty and start treating you like the martial artist you clearly are. Another pause. I owe you an apology, Loretta. I underestimated you. Apology accepted, Loretta said simply. There's something else, Liam continued. The charity event is in 3 weeks. The committee has finalized the match lists, and I've officially included you as a participant. Despite the objections, because of them, Liam replied with newfound conviction. Some lessons can only be taught on the mat. The following Saturday, Loretta pushed herself harder than usual during her morning practice. As she executed a particularly demanding kata, a sharp pain shot through her lower back. She gasped, freezing mid-movement. Grandma, Jaden called from the porch. You okay? Just a little twinge, she lied, straightening slowly. Nothing serious. But by that afternoon, the pain had intensified. During class, she winced as she demonstrated. A simple block, unable to hide her discomfort from Coach Liam's watchful eye. "Take a break, Loretta," he suggested quietly. "Sit this one out." She started to protest, but relented when another spasm hit. As she lowered herself to the bench, she caught Brenda Williams watching with a satisfied smirk. That evening, Loretta soaked in a hot bath, trying to ease her aching muscles. Doubt crept in for the first time since she'd begun this journey. Was she pushing too hard? Was her body betraying her just when her spirit had found its purpose again? She closed her eyes, remembering Robert's voice. "Pain is the body's wisdom. Listen to it, respect it, but don't let it define your limits." Monday morning, Loretta was back in her backyard, moving more gently, but with renewed determination. The pain had subsided to a dull ache. Manageable. She modified her routine, focusing on precision rather than power. When Jaden joined her, his eyes were full of concern. "Should you be doing this, Grandma? Just need to be smarter about it." She replied, "Age means working with your body, not against it." That evening at the dojo, Coach Liam approached her before class. "How's the back?" "Better," she said honestly. "Not perfect, but better." He nodded. "Good, because I have news." He held up a sheet of paper, the official match list for the charity event. Due to a registration mix-up, the committee had to rearrange some of the pairings. Loretta took the paper, scanning the names until she found her own. Her opponent, Connor Williams. A hush fell over the dojo as others saw the list. Gasps and whispers spread like wildfire. Brenda Williams stormed up to Liam, her face flushed with anger. "This is outrageous. You can't possibly allow this match to proceed." "The committee made the pairings, Mrs. Williams," Liam replied calmly. "All participants signed the same waiver." "She'll get hurt," Brenda protested. "Perhaps," Liam conceded. "That's the risk we all take when we step onto the mat." Connor pushed through the crowd. His usual swagger momentarily faltered when he saw his name paired with Loretta's. But quickly, his cocky smile returned. "Easy win," he announced loudly. "I'll try not to break anything important, Granny." The laughter that followed was noticeably thinner than before. Many students glanced between Connor and Loretta with uncertainty. Loretta simply bowed slightly. "I look forward to our match." As class ended and students filtered out, Jaden grabbed Loretta's arm. "Grandma, you can't fight Connor. He's brutal in sparring. Coaches had to warn him about control." "I know," Loretta said, watching Connor leave with his mother. Both of them engaged in animated conversation. "That's exactly why I need to face him." "But," "No buts," Loretta interrupted gently. "Sometimes the loudest people need the quietest lessons." The days flew by in a blur of training, stretching, and preparation. Loretta worked through her back pain, focusing on techniques that would minimize strain. Jaden became her devoted training partner, holding pads and practicing combinations with growing skill. The night before the charity event, Loretta sat on her back porch, sipping tea and watching fireflies dance in the twilight. Tomorrow would test more than her physical abilities. It would test her resolve, her courage, and the statement she had come to make. "I'm ready," she whispered to the evening air, to Robert's memory, to herself. The community center gymnasium had been transformed. Blue mats covered the center floor, surrounded by rows of folding chairs already filling with spectators. Banners announcing the Community Karate Challenge for Children's Hospital hung from the walls. Volunteers in bright t-shirts bustled about, setting up a refreshment table and checking the sound system. Loretta stood in the women's locker room, carefully tying her pink GI. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, smoothing the fabric, adjusting the belt. In the mirror, she saw not just a 66-year-old grandmother, but a martial artist reclaiming her path. That a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Grandma, you ready?" Jaden's voice called. "They're doing the opening ceremony soon." "Coming, baby." When Loretta emerged, Jaden's face lit up with pride. "You look awesome." The gymnasium buzzed with energy as participants and spectators found their places. Local news crews had set up in one corner. The pink GI Granny story had attracted more attention than anyone anticipated. Even the mayor had made an appearance, chatting with Coach Liam near the judges' table as Loretta walked toward the warm-up area. Conversations paused and heads turned. She held her chin high, acknowledging the stares with dignity. From across the room, she spotted Connor in his crisp white GI, performing high kicks and punches for a small crowd of admirers. His mother Brenda stood nearby, phone in hand, occasionally shouting encouragement. "This'll be over in 2 seconds." Brenda's voice carried deliberately loud. Coach should never have allowed this matchup. Several parents nodded in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable. The division was clear. Those who saw Loretta as an interloper versus those intrigued by her unexpected presence. Jaden hovered at the edge of the mat, nervously shifting his weight from one foot to the other. When Coach Liam approached, he placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "She's got this," Liam said with quiet confidence. "You really think so?" Jaden's voice wavered between hope and doubt. "I know so." Liam squeezed his shoulder. "Sometimes the strongest trees are the ones that have weathered the most storms." The opening ceremony began with Coach Liam welcoming everyone and explaining the event's purpose, raising funds for the Children's Hospital while showcasing the dojo's students. A representative from the hospital spoke briefly, thanking participants and spectators for their support. Then the matches began. Younger students went first, their bouts characterized by enthusiasm more than technique. Parents cheered wildly for every point scored. The atmosphere was festive, supportive as the afternoon progressed. The skill level increased. Teenagers demonstrated impressive combinations and tactical awareness. Connor watched them all with a critical eye, occasionally making loud comments about missed opportunities or poor form. Finally, the announcement came. Next match, Connor Williams versus Loretta Johnson. The gymnasium fell into a hushed anticipation. Spectators leaned forward in their seats. Phones were raised to record. Jaden closed his eyes briefly. As if in prayer, Loretta and Connor approached the center mat from opposite sides. The contrast was stark. A 14-year-old boy at the peak of adolescent fitness versus a 66-year-old grandmother in a bright pink GI. Connor performed a few flashy kicks for the crowd. Loretta simply stretched her shoulders and focused her breathing. They met in the center, where the referee, a black belt from another dojo, explained the rules. Light to medium contact, points. Awarded for clean strikes. Match ends at 5 points or after 3 minutes. Bow to each other, the referee instructed. Connor bent at the waist with exaggerated formality, winking mockingly at Loretta. She returned the bow with perfect form, her eyes never leaving his. "Let's dance," she whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. Connor's smile faltered momentarily, then returned with renewed cockiness. "Begin," called the referee. Stepping back, Connor didn't hesitate. He lunged forward with a rapid jab-cross combination, closing the distance with startling speed. The crowd gasped collectively. It seemed too aggressive a start, but where Connor expected to find Loretta, there was only empty space. With a subtle shift that belied her age, she had sidestepped his attack entirely. Before he could recover his balance, she pivoted, caught his extended arm, and with a fluid motion that seemed to defy physics, redirected his momentum. Connor's feet left the ground. For a suspended moment, he hung in the air, surprise replacing confidence on his face. Then gravity reclaimed him. He hit the mat with a resounding thud that echoed through the suddenly silent gymnasium. For several heartbeats, no one moved. No one spoke. Even the referee stood frozen, his hand halfway raised to award points. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single person began to clap. Others joined, the applause swelling until it filled the room. Jaden gasped audibly, his hands covering his mouth in awe. Connor lay stunned for a moment before scrambling to his feet, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Lucky move," he muttered, resuming his fighting stance. The referee awarded Loretta 2 points for the clean throw. "Continue," he called. Connor's approach changed. Gone was the showboating, replaced by focused intensity. He circled Loretta cautiously, feinting jabs to test her reactions. She remained centered, turning slightly to track his movements, her guard neither too high nor too low. With a sudden burst of speed, Connor launched a side kick aimed at Loretta's midsection. Again, she wasn't where the kick expected her to be. She slipped to the outside of his attack, captured his extended leg, and with perfect timing, executed a sweep that took his standing leg out from under him. Connor hit the mat for the second time, harder than before. A collective ooh rose from the crowd. Point, Loretta Johnson, the referee announced. Score, 3-0. Brenda Williams stood rigid at the edge of the mat, her face a mask of disbelief. Other parents who had dismissed Loretta now watched. With newfound respect, Coach Liam couldn't suppress a smile. Connor jumped up immediately this time, rage replacing embarrassment. He charged Loretta with a flurry of strikes, jabs, crosses, hooks. Abandoning technique for pure aggression, Loretta blocked and parried, her movements economical and precise. When Connor overextended on a wild hook, she caught his arm, stepped inside his guard, and applied a textbook arm lock. Connor yelped as she applied just enough pressure to demonstrate control without causing injury. Tap, she said quietly. For a moment, Connor resisted, his pride warring with reality. Then, reluctantly, he tapped her arm in submission. Match point and victory to Loretta Johnson, the referee declared, raising her hand. The gymnasium erupted. In applause, people rose to their feet, cheering and whistling. Even some who had been skeptical joined the ovation, won over by the display of skill and control. Loretta bowed deeply to Connor, then turned and bowed to the crowd. Thank you, she said with quiet dignity. And remember, strength isn't always loud. Connor stood awkwardly on the mat, his usual bravado stripped away. For the first time, he looked his age, just a teenage boy who had been humbled in public. Brenda Williams stormed toward the exit, pushing past spectators without apology. A few parents followed, but most remained, buzzing with excitement about what they had witnessed. As Loretta stepped off the mat, Jaden rushed to embrace her. Grandma, that was amazing. How did you? I mean, you just… Words failed him as emotion took over. Breathe, child. Loretta laughed, returning his hug. It's just what I told you. Sometimes the loudest people need the quietest lessons. Coach Liam approached, shaking his head in wonderment. Loretta, that was extraordinary. Where did you learn to move like that? From my husband, she replied simply. Robert believed karate wasn't about overpowering your opponent, but about understanding energy, yours and theirs. He taught you. Well, Liam said with genuine respect. Throughout the remainder of the event, people approached Loretta to shake her hand, ask questions, or simply express admiration. Young girls stared at her with newfound wonder. Older women nodded in understanding. Parents who had once whispered behind her back now sought her advice. Near the refreshment table, Loretta overheard a teenager tearing up a piece of paper. What are you doing? His friend asked. Getting rid of this, he replied. It's Brenda's petition to have Mrs. Johnson removed from the dojo. I signed it last week, but that was dumb. She belongs there more than most of us. By the time Loretta and Jaden left the community center, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Jaden couldn't stop replaying moments from the match, his hands gesturing wildly as he described things she had actually done. And when he came at you with that kick and you just… whoosh. And he went down like… bam. Loretta chuckled. I think I remember. I was there. As they reached their car, Jaden's excitement calmed into something more reflective. Grandma, do you think Connor will ever talk to me again? Without, being mean? Loretta considered this as she unlocked the doors. I think Connor learned something important today. Not just about karate, but about assumptions and respect. Whether he applies that lesson is up to him. I hope he does, Jaden said softly. Me too, baby. Me too. What neither of them knew as they drove home was that someone had recorded Loretta's match on their phone. Within hours, the clip would be uploaded with the caption, Pink GI Granny just threw this dude like a rag doll. By morning, it would have thousands of views, comments, and shares. Loretta Johnson, widow, grandmother, baker of perfect pound cake, was about to become an internet sensation. But that night, as she soaked her tired muscles in a hot bath, all she felt was the quiet satisfaction of having reclaimed a piece of herself she thought was lost forever. And somewhere, she was certain, Robert was smiling. The community center gymnasium hummed with excitement. Blue competition mats covered the center floor, surrounded by rows of folding chairs already filling with spectators. Hand-painted banners announcing the Community Karate Challenge for Children's Hospital hung from the walls, while volunteers, in bright t-shirts, directed visitors and set up a refreshment table. Loretta stood in the women's locker room, carefully adjusting her pink GI. Her movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic, straightening the collar, smoothing the fabric across her shoulders, tightening her belt with practiced precision. In the mirror, she saw beyond her 66 years to the martial artist she had once been and was becoming again. Outside, the buzz of conversation grew louder. The charity event had drawn more attention than anyone expected, partly due to the unusual story of the pink GI granny that had circulated through town. Even a reporter from the local newspaper had shown up, camera in hand. "Grandma," Jaden's voice called through the door. "Coach Liam says they're starting soon." "Coming, baby," Loretta replied, taking one final look in the mirror. She touched the belt at her waist and whispered, "This one's for you, Robert." The gymnasium was packed when Loretta emerged. Parents, students, and curious community members filled every available seat. She spotted Connor near the warm-up area, performing high kicks and exaggerated punches for a small crowd of younger students. His mother Brenda stood nearby, her expression smug as she surveyed the room. "This'll be over in 2 seconds," Brenda announced loudly to another parent. "I don't know what coach was thinking allowing this matchup." Several people nodded in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable. The division was clear: those who viewed Loretta as an amusing novelty versus those intrigued by her unexpected presence. Jaden stood at the edge of the mat, shifting nervously from foot to foot. Coach Liam approached and placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "She's got this," Liam said with quiet confidence. "You really think so?" Jaden's voice wavered between hope and doubt. "I know so." Liam squeezed his shoulder. "She's stronger than anyone here realizes." The opening ceremony began with brief speeches about the importance of community and the funds being raised for the Children's Hospital. Participants were introduced, and the first matches got underway. Younger students paired against each other in short, often chaotic bouts that drew enthusiastic applause from proud parents. As the afternoon progressed, the skill level increased. Teenagers demonstrated impressive techniques, their movements sharper and more controlled. Connor watched them all with a critical eye, occasionally making loud comments about missed opportunities or poor form. Finally, the announcement came. Next match, Connor Williams versus Loretta Johnson. A hush fell over the gymnasium. Spectators leaned forward in their seats. Phones were raised to record what many expected would be either a quick humiliation or an amusing spectacle. Jaden closed his eyes briefly, his lips moving in silent prayer. Loretta and Connor approached the center mat from opposite sides. The contrast couldn't have been more striking: a 14-year-old boy at the peak of adolescent fitness versus a 66-year-old grandmother in a bright pink GI. Connor performed a few flashy spin kicks for the crowd. Loretta simply rolled her shoulders and focused on her breathing. They met in the center, where the referee, a black belt from another dojo, explained the rules. Light to medium contact, points awarded for clean strikes. Match ends at 5 points or after 3 minutes. Bow to each other, the referee instructed. Connor bent at the waist with exaggerated formality, winking mockingly at Loretta as he did. "Let's get this over with, Granny," he whispered. "Let's dance," she replied softly, her eyes never leaving. Connor's smile faltered momentarily before he recovered his cocky expression. "Begin," called the referee. Stepping back, Connor didn't hesitate. He lunged forward with a rapid jab-cross combination, closing the distance with startling speed. The crowd gasped collectively. It seemed too aggressive for an opening move, especially against an older opponent. But where Connor expected to find Loretta, there was only empty space. With a subtle shift that belied her age, she had sidestepped his attack entirely. Before he could recover his balance, she pivoted, caught his extended arm, and with a fluid motion that seemed to defy physics, redirected his momentum. Connor's feet left the ground. For a suspended moment, he hung in the air, surprise replacing confidence on his face. Then gravity reclaimed him. He hit the mat with a resounding thud that echoed through the suddenly silent gymnasium. N01 moved. No one spoke. Even the referee stood frozen, his hand halfway raised to award points. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single person began to clap. Others joined, the applause swelling until it filled the room. Jaden gasped audibly, his hands covering his mouth in awe. Connor lay stunned for a moment before scrambling to his feet, his face flushed with embarrassment and rage. "Lucky move," he muttered, resuming his fighting stance. The referee awarded Loretta 2 points for the clean throw. "Continue," he called. Connor's approach changed. Gone was the showboating, replaced by focused intensity. He circled Loretta cautiously, feinting jabs to test her reactions. She remained centered, turning slightly to track his movements, her guard neither too high nor too low. With a sudden burst of speed, Connor launched a side kick aimed at Loretta's midsection. Again, she wasn't where the kick expected her to be. She slipped to the outside of his attack, captured his extended leg, and with perfect timing, executed a sweep that took his standing leg out from under him. Connor hit the mat for the second time, harder than before. A collective ooh rose from the crowd. "Point, Loretta Johnson," the referee announced. Score, 3-0. Brenda Williams stood rigid at the edge of the mat, her face a mask of disbelief. Other parents who had dismissed Loretta now watched. With newfound respect, Coach Liam couldn't suppress a smile. Connor jumped up immediately this time, rage replacing embarrassment. He charged Loretta with a flurry of strikes, jabs, crosses, hooks. Abandoning technique for pure aggression, Loretta blocked and parried, her movements economical and precise. When Connor overextended on a wild hook, she caught his arm, stepped inside his guard, and applied a textbook arm lock. Connor yelped as she applied just enough pressure to demonstrate control without causing injury. "Tap," she said quietly. For a moment, Connor resisted, his pride warring with reality. Then, reluctantly, he tapped her arm in submission. "Match point and victory to Loretta Johnson," the referee declared, raising her hand. The gymnasium erupted. In applause, people rose to their feet, cheering and whistling. Even some who had been skeptical joined the ovation, won over by the display of skill and control. Loretta bowed deeply to Connor, then turned and bowed to the crowd. "Thank you," she said with quiet dignity. "And remember, strength isn't always loud." Connor stood awkwardly on the mat, his usual bravado stripped away. For the first time, he looked his age, just a teenage boy who had been humbled in public. Brenda stormed toward the exit, pushing past spectators without apology. A few parents followed, but most remained, buzzing with excitement about what they had witnessed. As Loretta stepped off the mat, Jaden rushed to embrace her. "Grandma, that was amazing. How did you? I mean, you just..." Words failed him as emotion took over. "Breathe, child." Loretta laughed, returning his hug. "It's just what I told you. Sometimes the loudest people need the quietest lessons." Throughout the remainder of the event, people approached Loretta to shake her hand or express admiration. Young girls stared at her with newfound wonder. Older women nodded in understanding. Parents who had once whispered behind her back now sought her advice. Near the refreshment table, a teenager tore up a piece of paper. "What are you doing?" his friend asked. "Getting rid of this," he replied. "It's Brenda's petition to have Mrs. Johnson removed from the dojo. I signed it last week, but that was dumb. She belongs there more than most of us." What Loretta didn't know as she and Jaden drove home that evening was that someone had recorded her match on their phone. Within hours, the clip would be uploaded with the caption, "Pink GI Granny just threw this dude like a rag doll." By morning, it would have thousands of views, comments, and shares. The knocking on Loretta's front door started at 7:30 the next morning. She opened it to find a woman with a microphone and a man with a camera, both bearing the logo of the local news station. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm Angela Rivera from Channel 8 News. We'd love to get an interview about your amazing performance yesterday at the karate tournament." Loretta blinked in surprise. "My performance? The video's gone viral," Angela explained enthusiastically. "Over 50,000 views already, and it's being picked up by national outlets. You're a sensation." Loretta allowed them into her living room, where she sat uncomfortably as lights were adjusted and questions prepared. Jaden watched from the kitchen doorway, eyes wide with amazement. "So, Mrs. Johnson, how does it feel to be an overnight internet celebrity?" Angela asked once the camera was rolling. "I'm not famous," Loretta replied, smoothing her dress. "I'm just finally finishing something I started a long time ago. Can you tell our viewers about your martial arts background? Where did you train? How long have you been doing karate?" "My late husband was an instructor," Loretta explained. "I trained with him in my youth. but stopped after he passed away. It's been nearly 40 years. And what made you return now, at 66? Loretta's eyes found Jaden. Sometimes the best way to teach is by example. The interview continued for 20 minutes, with Loretta deflecting questions about her message to women her age and attempts to frame her as some kind of crusader. By the time the news crew left, promising the segment would air that evening, Loretta was exhausted. "You're famous, Grandma," Jaden grinned, bouncing on his toes. "Nonsense," she replied, though she couldn't help but smile at his excitement. "Now help me with these dishes. Fame doesn't clean kitchens." The following Monday at school, Jaden noticed an immediate difference. Students who had previously ignored him now greeted him in the hallway. During lunch, a group of boys invited him to their table. "Your grandma is awesome," one said. "My dad showed me the video like 10 times. She's been training me," Jaden replied, a new confidence in his voice. "Said I have natural talent." Later that day, he witnessed a 7th grader mocking a smaller boy near the bathrooms. Without hesitation, Jaden stepped between them. "Leave him alone," he said firmly. "Or what?" the older boy challenged. "Or my grandma would body slam you for that," Jaden replied calmly. "And I'm learning everything she knows." The 7th grader looked uncertain, then backed away with a shrug. "Whatever. Wasn't worth my time anyway." That afternoon, Loretta received a letter in the mail. The handwriting on the envelope was shaky but determined. Inside, she found a note from a woman named Eleanor Jenkins. "Dear Mrs. Johnson," it read, "I'm 64 years old, and I've spent the last decade afraid to leave my house after dark. After seeing your video, I signed up for a self-defense class at the YWCA. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to reclaim your power. Sincerely, Eleanor." Loretta read the letter twice, tears welling in her eyes. She placed it carefully in her keepsake box, next to Robert's old tournament medals. 3 days later, Coach Liam called Loretta after class. "I received an interesting phone call today," he said. "A woman named Denise Thomas. She says she knew you back in the 70s. Loretta's breath caught. "Denise? I haven't heard that name in decades. She saw your video and recognized you immediately. Says you two were rivals once upon a time." "That's putting it mildly," Loretta chuckled. "We competed against each other at every tournament in 3 states. She was incredible, faster than anyone I'd ever seen. Well, she wants to see you again. She's coming to the dojo tomorrow afternoon." The next day, Loretta arrived early, her stomach fluttering with nervous energy. She was arranging practice pads when the door opened and a woman in a wheelchair entered, pushed by a younger man who appeared to be her son. Denise Thomas had aged, of course. Her once black hair now silver, her face lined, but her eyes still held the same fierce intelligence Loretta remembered. Well, Denise called out. "If it isn't the terror in pink herself." Loretta crossed the room and the two women embraced, laughing and crying simultaneously. "Look at you," Denise said, pulling back to examine Loretta. "Still fit as ever. Still throwing men half your age across rooms." "And look at you," Loretta replied, still making dramatic entrances. They moved to a quiet corner while Denise's son joined a few students practicing on the mat. Coach Liam discreetly gave them space, though he clearly was curious about their conversation. "I never thought I'd see you on a mat again," Denise said. "Not after what happened with Robert, and then your family." "Life takes unexpected turns," Loretta replied. "What about you? Last I heard, you were teaching in Chicago." Denise patted her wheelchair. "Spinal injury. Car accident 12 years ago. Ended my teaching career, but not my love for the art." She leaned forward. "You know, most people think you quit because of Robert's death. But I remember the real story." Liam, passing nearby with equipment, slowed his pace. "You were one test away from your black belt," Denise continued. "But your sister got sick, and your mother needed help with the younger kids. You didn't quit for yourself, you quit for them." Loretta's eyes misted. "Family comes first. Always has. And now? What brought you back after all this time?" "Another family member who needed me," Loretta said, glancing toward Jaden, who was showing another student a technique, just in a different way. Later, as Denise prepared to leave, Liam approached them. "Mrs. Thomas, it's been an honor having you visit." "The honor is mine," Denise replied. "Not every day I get to see a living legend in action." Liam's eyebrows rose. "Living legend? You really don't know, do you?" Denise laughed. Before she hung up her belt, Loretta trained under Robert Johnson. He studied directly with Master Higashiana in Okinawa. In our circuit, the Johnsons were royalty. She looked at Loretta with affection. This one was 3 months away from earning her black belt. Would have been the first black woman in the Southeast to do it. Liam stared at Loretta with new understanding. I had no idea. Wasn't important, Loretta said simply. Wasn't important? Denise scoffed. Tell him about the Anderson tournament. Go on. Loretta shook her head, but smiled at the memory. That was a lifetime ago. She took down the state champion in under 30 seconds, Denise told Liam. He outweighed her by 50 pounds and had 8 inches on her. Never saw it coming. After Denise left, Liam walked Loretta to her car. Why didn't you tell me about your background when you first registered? Would you have believed me? Loretta asked. Or would you have thought I was just an old woman living in the past? Liam had the grace to look embarrassed. I'm sorry for underestimating you. No need for apologies. Sometimes the best lessons come from unexpected teachers. That evening, Loretta received another call from the news station. A national morning show wanted to interview her via satellite. Other requests had come in too. A women's magazine, a podcast about inspiring seniors, even a local advertisement for the community center. I don't want all this attention, she told Jaden as they prepared dinner. I just wanted to finish what I started. But you're helping people, Grandma, Jaden insisted. Like that lady who wrote you the letter. And me. Loretta considered this as she stirred the soup. Perhaps there was purpose in this unexpected spotlight. Perhaps Robert had been guiding her all along, not just to reclaim her own path, but to light the way for others. The following day, as Loretta arrived at the dojo for class, she found Connor waiting by the entrance. He stood alone, without his usual entourage, shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot. Mrs. Johnson, he said when she approached. Can I talk to you for a second? Loretta nodded, curious about what the boy might want. I just wanted to say, Connor struggled with the words. What you did at the tournament. It was really good. And I'm sorry for being a jerk before. The apology clearly cost him, his face flushed with the effort of humility. Thank you, Connor, Loretta said gently. That takes courage. My dad saw the video, Connor continued. He said you taught me more in 3 minutes than he's seen me learn all year. He looked down at his shoes. I think he's right. They bowed to each other, not the exaggerated bow of their match, but a genuine gesture of mutual respect. Inside, Coach Liam was arranging students for a demonstration when he spotted Loretta. Perfect timing, he called. I was just about to announce something. When everyone had gathered, Liam cleared his throat. Due to increased interest in our programs, we're adding a new class to our schedule, the Legacy class, designed for older students and families training together. He smiled at Loretta, and I'd like to ask Mrs. Johnson to help lead it. Surprised murmurs ran through the group, followed by nods of approval. Jaden beamed with pride. After class, Liam approached Loretta with a small box. This is unorthodox, he admitted. But after learning about your history and seeing what you bring to this dojo, it felt right. He opened the box to reveal a belt, not black, but deep pink, almost magenta. This is an honorary belt, he explained. Not a replacement for the black belt you'll earn, but a recognition of what you've already accomplished. Loretta touched the belt with trembling fingers. I don't know what to say. You've made pink mean something, Liam said simply. It's no longer a joke. It's a symbol of perseverance. As the entire class bowed to her, Loretta felt tears slide down her cheeks. In that moment, she wasn't just Grandma Loretta or even the pink GI Granny. She was a martial artist completing a journey decades in the making and beginning an entirely new one. That morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Loretta's living room, where she sat surrounded by stacks of newspaper clippings, printed emails, and handwritten letters. 3 weeks had passed since the charity tournament, and her life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. Another package came, Jaden announced, carrying in a small box. From Arizona this time. Loretta sighed. Said it with the others, baby. The dining table was already crowded with gifts from well-wishers across the country. Handmade cards, knitted scarves, a pink-handled walking stick with a karate belt carved into the wood. Her refrigerator door was covered with children's drawings of Karate Grandma in her pink GI. You should open them, Jaden urged. People send these because they care. I know, Loretta replied. But I didn't do this for attention. She gestured to the television, where a morning show host was introducing a segment called The Pink Belt Warrior. Age is just a number. Jaden turned up the volume as footage played of Loretta's match with Connor, followed by clips from her interview with the local news station. The host's voice narrated over the images. 66-year-old Loretta Johnson has become an overnight sensation, inspiring people of all ages to reconsider what's possible. At least they got your age right, Jaden grinned. Loretta was about to respond when her phone rang. Coach Liam's number flashing on the screen. Loretta, he said when she answered, I've got some news. The Regional Martial Arts Board reviewed your case. Given your prior training and recent demonstration of skill, they've approved your request to resume the black belt testing process. Loretta's heart skipped. Truly, officially, you'll be following an accelerated program that acknowledges your previous training under Robert Johnson. You'll need to complete the formal testing requirements, but you won't have to start from scratch. When do I begin? Loretta asked, her voice steady despite the emotion welling inside her. Next Monday, if you're ready. Liam paused. It won't be easy, Loretta. The physical demands are significant. I've waited 40 years, she replied. I can handle a few more months. After hanging up, Loretta sat quietly, processing the news. This was what she had secretly hoped for since the moment she'd stepped back into a dojo, the chance to complete the journey she'd abandoned decades ago. Jaden watched her face carefully. What did Coach say? I'm going to test for my black belt, she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. For real this time. Jaden's face lit up. That's awesome, Grandma. Then, more seriously, are you scared? Loretta considered the question. Not scared. Respectful of the challenge. She stood, straightening her shoulders. Your grandfather used to say, the belt don't make the fighter, but the fighter must honor the belt. The news of Loretta's black belt journey spread quickly. That evening, a national news outlet ran a segment titled Karate Grandma's Next Challenge, complete with expert commentary on the difficulty of earning a black belt at her age. Social media buzzed with hashtags like hashtag pink belt to black belt and hashtag grandma strong. But Loretta remained focused, undistracted by the attention. The following morning, she began a new training regimen, more intensive, more structured. She rose earlier, practiced longer, pushed her body further than she had in decades. You need to pace yourself, Jaden cautioned one evening when he found her massaging her aching shoulders. You've got months to prepare. Time isn't my friend in this, child, Loretta replied. These old muscles need more convincing than they used to. As word spread about Loretta's quest, unexpected visitors began arriving at the dojo. First came a man in his 60s, who introduced himself as Daniel Kwan. I trained under your husband. In 1973, he explained, bowing deeply to Loretta. When I heard you were seeking your black belt, I had to come pay my respects. Others followed, former students of Robert's, some traveling from neighboring states. They shared stories of his teaching, his philosophy, his impact on their lives. Many brought old photographs, yellowed snapshots of tournaments and training sessions, some featuring a young Loretta assisting her husband. He always said you were his best student, an elderly man named Frank told her. Said you understood the spirit of karate better than anyone. These connections to her past moved Loretta deeply. She gathered the photos and stories, creating a small album that she kept near her bedside. Meanwhile, Jaden was experiencing his own transformation. Inspired by his grandmother, he had begun training with renewed dedication. At his first small tournament, he competed in the beginners kata division and won second place. For you, Grandma, he said, presenting her with his trophy. The best sensei ever. Loretta's training intensified as the weeks passed. Under Coach Liam's guidance, she worked through the required kata, self-defense techniques, and sparring components of the black belt test. Some days were better than others. There were mornings when her joints protested so loudly she could barely complete her warm-up. But she pushed through, adapting when necessary, never yielding to the limitations of age. The community watched her journey with growing admiration. The legacy class she helped teach became the dojo's most popular offering, filled with older adults, parents training alongside their children, and others inspired by Loretta's example. Even Connor had changed. No longer the brash teenager who mocked others, he now trained with quiet focus, occasionally asking Loretta for guidance on a particular technique. His mother Brenda remained conspicuously absent, but Connor's father began attending classes, watching from the sidelines with obvious pride in his son's newfound maturity. One unusually cold morning in early autumn, Loretta pushed herself harder than usual, determined to master a particularly challenging kata. The movements required explosive power followed by perfect balance, a combination that tested even younger practitioners. After an hour of repetition, her vision suddenly blurred. The room tilted, and before she could catch herself, darkness swallowed her consciousness. She awoke in the hospital, Jaden's worried face hovering above her. "Grandma, you're awake." A doctor explained that she had collapsed from exhaustion, compounded by slight dehydration. "Your body is sending you a message, Mrs. Johnson. You need to listen." Later, when they were alone, Jaden clutched her hand. "You scared me, Grandma. Maybe you should stop." "No," Loretta interrupted gently. "I'm not stopping, but I might need to be smarter about how I train." She squeezed his hand. "If I go out, I'm going out swinging. Just need to make sure I'm swinging with wisdom, not just determination." The health scare forced Loretta to reconsider her approach. With Coach Liam's help, she developed a modified training schedule that respected her body's needs while still preparing her for the test. More rest days, shorter, more focused sessions, greater attention to recovery. The path to black belt isn't just about physical technique, Liam reminded her. It's about balance in all things. 2 weeks after her collapse, Loretta was back at the dojo, moving with more measured intensity. After class one evening, Connor approached her hesitantly. "Mrs. Johnson, can I talk to you for a minute?" She nodded, curious about what the boy might want. The last time they'd spoken had been his apology, followed by polite but distant respect. "I've been thinking a lot about our match," Connor began, "and everything since then." He took a deep breath. "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "For showing me what real strength looks like." His eyes met hers directly. "My dad says I was becoming the kind of person he didn't want to know. But seeing you, how you train, how you treat others, it made me want to be better." Loretta was momentarily speechless. "Finally," she said, "that's quite a realization for someone your age." "Yeah, well," Connor shrugged. "Turns out getting thrown across a mat by someone's grandma makes you think about stuff." They both laughed, and in that moment, something healed between them. As autumn progressed, Loretta found unexpected allies in her journey. Denise Thomas, her former rival, began visiting regularly, offering insights from her years as an instructor. Together with Loretta, she developed a program they called GI and Grace, a self-defense workshop specifically for older women. "Many of us grew up believing we needed to be protected," Denise explained to their first class of mostly grandmothers. "Today, we learn to protect ourselves." The workshop became a weekly fixture at the community center, drawing participants from across town. Some came out of curiosity, others driven by Loretta's viral fame, but all left with something valuable: a stance, a technique, a renewed confidence in their own bodies. Coach Liam watched this evolution with growing appreciation. One evening, after everyone else had left, he sat with Loretta on the edge of the mat. "You've changed this place," he said simply. "Changed me too." "How so?" Loretta asked. "I used to think martial arts was about competition, about being better, faster, stronger than the next person." He gestured around the empty dojo. "You showed me it's about connection, about building something together." As the date of her black belt test approached, Loretta felt a curious calm settle over her. The publicity had faded somewhat, allowing her to focus on the final preparations. Each morning, she visited Robert's grave, sitting quietly beside the headstone, sometimes talking aloud about her progress, other times simply being present with his memory. "It's time, baby," she whispered on her final visit before the test. "I'll be wearing this one for both of us." The morning of Loretta's black belt test dawned clear and crisp. She rose before the sun, performed her usual kata in the backyard, then sat in meditation until Jaden's sleepy voice called from the back door. "Today's the day, Grandma." She opened her eyes and smiled. "Today's the day." The dojo had been transformed for the occasion. Extra seating lined the walls, quickly filling with spectators, students, parents, community members, even a few reporters. The local mayor arrived, shaking hands and posing for photos. Denise Thomas sat in her wheelchair near the front, wearing a t-shirt with Team Loretta emblazoned across the chest. Coach Liam had arranged for 3 master-level black belts from neighboring dojos to serve as judges. They sat at a table at the front of the room, their expressions serious as they reviewed the testing requirements. In the locker room, Loretta changed into her pink GI with slow, deliberate movements. She touched the honorary pink belt Liam had given her months ago, then carefully folded it and placed it in her bag. Today, she would wear her original white belt, coming full circle to where her journey had paused 4 decades earlier. When she emerged, the room fell silent. She walked to the center of the mat and bowed to the judges, to Coach Liam, and finally to the assembled spectators. From the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Jaden, fidgeting nervously beside Denise. "Loretta Johnson," announced the chief. "Judge, you are here today to test for the rank of first-degree black belt. This examination will evaluate your technical skills, physical conditioning, mental focus, and understanding of martial arts principles. Are you prepared to begin?" "I am," Loretta replied, her voice steady. The test began with basic techniques: punches, kicks, blocks, and stances, performed in sequence. Loretta executed each movement with precision, her form clean despite the occasional tightness in her joints. The judges watched impassively, making notes on their clipboards. Next came the kata demonstrations. Loretta had selected 5 forms to present, ranging from basic to advanced. As she moved through each sequence, her focus narrowed until nothing existed beyond her body in motion. The room disappeared. The spectators vanished. Even time seemed to slow as she inhabited each movement fully. When she completed the final kata, sweat dampened her GI and her breathing came heavily, but her eyes remained clear and determined. The judges conferred briefly before nodding for the test to continue. The self-defense portion followed. Loretta demonstrated responses to various attacks, grabs, strikes, multiple opponents, working with partners from the dojo. Her techniques were efficient and effective, drawing on decades of muscle memory and recent intensive training. "Excellent adaptations," murmured one judge to another. "She compensates for reduced speed with superior positioning." As the test progressed, Loretta could feel her energy beginning to wane. The months of preparation had built her endurance significantly, but at 66, there were limits her body still imposed. She paced herself carefully, conserving strength for the final and most demanding segment: live sparring against current black belts. 3 opponents were selected, each presenting different challenges. The first, a tall man in his 30s, used his reach advantage to keep Loretta at distance. The second, a woman in her 20s, relied on speed and agility. The third, a compact, powerful fighter in his 40s, tested Loretta's ability to handle strength. Against each, she demonstrated not dominance, but skill, avoiding rather than blocking, redirecting rather than opposing, finding the path of least resistance. When the final bout ended, the room erupted in applause. Even the judges allowed themselves small smiles of appreciation. "We will now proceed to the knowledge portion," announced the chief judge when the room quieted. "Mrs. Johnson, please explain the philosophical foundation of the kata you performed." For 15 minutes, Loretta answered questions about history, philosophy, and application. Her responses reflected not just technical understanding, but deep personal connection to the art. "Final demonstration," the chief judge said at last. "Please perform one kata of your choice that best represents your understanding of karate." A hush fell over the room. This was the moment Loretta had prepared for most carefully, her opportunity to honor not just the technical requirements of the test, but the spirit of her journey. She stepped to the center of the mat, closed her eyes briefly, and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, her gaze was clear and focused. What followed wasn't one of the standard kata she had practiced for months. Instead, Loretta began a sequence that few in the room recognized, an old form her husband had learned during his studies in Okinawa. It was rarely taught now, preserved mainly in the memories of those who had trained in earlier eras. Her movements were deliberate, graceful, powerful. The kata told a story, not of battle, but of resilience, of bending without breaking, of finding strength in softness and wisdom in patience. When she finished, perfect stillness filled the dojo. Then, slowly, the audience rose to their feet. The applause began softly, building to a thunderous roar. Tears streamed down Denise's face. Coach Liam stood with his hands pressed together in respect. Even the judges appeared moved, they're professional. Reserve momentarily forgotten, the chief judge cleared his throat. The judges will now confer. Please wait outside. As Loretta left the mat, Jaden rushed to her side. Grandma, that was amazing. What was that last form called? Mikio, she replied softly. It means bright mirror. Your grandfather taught it to me the week before he proposed. After 20 tense minutes, Loretta was called back inside. The dojo had been rearranged, with the judges now standing in a line at the center of the mat. Coach Liam stood beside them, holding something in his hands that Loretta couldn't quite see. Loretta Johnson, the chief judge began. We have evaluated your performance against the standards required for the rank of first-degree black belt. Your technical execution, physical conditioning, knowledge, and spirit have all been found. He paused, building tension. Jaden gripped Loretta's hand tightly. To meet and exceed those standards. It is our unanimous decision to award you the rank of Shodan, first-degree black belt. The room exploded in cheers. Loretta stood motionless, overwhelmed by emotion, as Coach Liam approached with the black belt in his hands. But instead of tying it around her waist himself, Liam turned and offered the belt to Jaden. I think someone else should have this honor, he said. Jaden stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly as he took the belt. Loretta knelt to make it easier for him, and with careful precision, her grandson wrapped the belt around her waist and tied it in the traditional manner Robert had taught her so long. As she rose, the applause intensified. Cameras flashed. People pressed forward to congratulate her, but Loretta raised her hand for silence. I'd like to say something, she said when the room quieted. This belt isn't for me. It's for every girl who quit because no one believed in her. For every boy too scared to try. And for every grandma who still has fight in her. Her words resonated through the room, moving many to tears. As the formal ceremony concluded, people lined up to speak with her, shake her hand, take photos. Among them was Connor, accompanied by both his parents, including Brenda, who stood awkwardly to the side. Congratulations, Mrs. Johnson, Connor said, bowing respectfully. Thank you, Connor. Loretta bowed in return, then glanced at Brenda. Mrs. Williams. Brenda nodded stiffly but said nothing. Her husband nudged her gently, and she managed a tight smile. Congratulations, she muttered before turning away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement, a small victory in its own way. The celebration continued at Loretta's home, where friends and family gathered for a potluck dinner. Denise told embarrassing stories about their competition days. Jaden proudly showed off his improving kata to anyone who would watch. Coach Liam presented Loretta with a framed photograph of Robert in his prime, teaching at his original dojo. As evening fell, the guests departed one by one, until only Loretta and Jaden remained, sitting on the back porch swing. What happens now, Grandma? Jaden asked. After the black belt? Loretta smiled. That's the beautiful thing about martial arts, child. The black belt isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning of a deeper one. 1 year later, the Pine Creek community dojo buzzed with activity. Students of all ages moved through their exercises under the watchful eye of Coach Liam. In one corner, a special class was underway, the GI and Grace program, now expanded to 3 sessions weekly due to popular demand. Loretta, wearing her black belt over her signature pink GI, demonstrated a wrist escape to a group of older women. Her movements were confident. Loretta, wearing her black belt over her signature pink GI, demonstrated a wrist escape to a group of older women. Her movements were confident, her instructions clear. At 67, she had become a fixture at the dojo, serving as both an assistant instructor and a living example of perseverance. Jaden, now 12 and sporting a green belt, led younger students through basic forms nearby. His transformation was remarkable, from the hesitant, bullied boy of a year ago to a confident young leader. The dojo itself had changed as well. Photographs lined the walls, not just of tournament champions, but of practitioners of all ages and backgrounds. A special display featured Robert Johnson's original teaching certificates alongside news clippings about Loretta's journey. The video of her match with Connor had accumulated over 2 million views online, inspiring similar programs at dojos across the country. As the afternoon class ended, a new group filed in, teenagers mostly, with a few adults mixed in. Among them was a tall boy with a cocky stride who immediately began showing off with flashy kicks. "Who's that?" whispered one of the women in Loretta's class. "New student," Loretta replied. "His first day? Been talking big since he arrived." The teenager's voice carried across the dojo. "I heard this place lets anyone in, even grandmas." A few students tensed, looking toward Loretta with concern. But she merely smiled, catching Jaden's eye. Her grandson grinned back, understanding. The silent exchange. Without a word, Loretta walked calmly toward the new student. The room fell quiet, everyone aware of what was about to happen. "Welcome to our dojo," Loretta said pleasantly. "I'm one of the instructors here. Would you like to demonstrate that kick again? I'd be happy to give you some pointers." The boy smirked, not recognizing her. "Sure, Grandma. Watch and learn." Jaden leaned against the wall, arms crossed, barely containing his smile. Coach Liam shook his head in amused anticipation. The crowd cheered as, moments later, the loudmouth flew through the air and landed with a solid thud on the mat. Legacy. Loretta thought as she helped the stunned boy to his feet, wasn't about belts or trophies. It was about the ripples you created in lives, in attitudes, in possibilities. It was about standing tall when others laughed and extending a hand after you proved your point. "Let's try that again," she said kindly. "This time, with proper balance." If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of unexpected heroes finding their strength against all odds.